let the thoughts of this moment be thoughts of tenderness and gratitude. Tenderness because of the person in whose memory we are now gathered. Gratitude for all that has been lovable throughout the years. Tenderness toward every human frailty. Gratitude for a life known intimately and held in honor. Gratitude for the privilege of knowing and of sharing with one another our experiences of joy and sorrow. Gratitude for opportunities to help and care for one another, which enable us to believe that our lives count. We would not be spared the consciousness of sorrow and loss. As our experience deepens, may our understanding of one another deepen also. And may we win from our joys and sorrows the wisdom of patience and sympathy, the courage to live faithfully, and the confidence that dark hours may have precious meanings. And may we gain a deepened sense of the sacredness and worth of a life well lived. Amen. The psalmist said, I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, and asked, from where will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day, the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life, your coming and your going now and forevermore. And let us find comfort in the words of the ancient sage. God, what are we that you are mindful of us? Or indeed, those who come after us that you take account. Our lives are as vanity, for our days pass away as a shadow. In the morning we flourish and blossom forth. In the evening we are cut down and wither. You turn us to contrition and demand return, O ye children. If you were wise, you would consider your end, for when you die you shall carry nothing away with you. Your glory shall not descend after you. But trust this, God does redeem the souls of the servants. None of them who trust shall be forsaken. We affirm, Hatzor tamim polo ki chol drachav mishpat. Thy work, O God, is perfect, for all thy ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and right. Who can say, what doest thou? Thou bringest death and giveth life. What mortal can demand of thee? What hast thou wrought? Thou alone, O God, dost righteously apportion both life and death. In thy hand is the destiny of all souls. Thou wilt not forget us. Thy mercy will surely abide with us. Blessed art thou, Judge of truth, who dost ordain death and summon us to life. Amen. We are taught, and we know from life, that the dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the Spirit which we will lay within the earth. The Spirit itself cannot die. Here is where our dear ones continue in the loving remembrance of those to whom they were precious. And so, dear God, we ask you to receive Floyd's soul in mercy. Grant him that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still, it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. We're going to hear first from Hallie, and then from Sandy Schenker, and then from Kenny Laurie, as we remember Floyd.
Monday, I lost a piece of me. That's all I'm going to say about that today, because I know everybody in this room feels a huge loss. And I found over these past few evenings with our family together, we've been having a really good time. We've been having a lot of fun. And I'm wondering how during this horrible, sad time, there can be so much laughter. And I know it's because our Father left us with more joy than sadness, every one of us. For me in particular, he left so much of himself in who I am. I love to have fun. I like to eat and drink. Good with numbers. Much to my children's chagrin, I have a tendency to say very inappropriate things right in front of them. And of course, we are all blessed to have him in our lives. About my father, he was a total hedonist, and I say that in the best of ways. His attitude was, why do anything halfway, right? If you're going to do anything, you do it all the way. Enjoy it to the fullest. If you're going to go to a restaurant, you get whatever you want. If you're going to a hotel, you find the most comfy hotel. You wear nice clothes. You drive nice cars. You just enjoy yourself. He was also a man of many talents. We know he's a great golfer. He loved being on the course with his friends. He had card player. He played cards every single morning against himself. And of course, the one time he enters a tournament in Vegas, he makes it to the top 10. Then he had some more obscure talents. He had a great arsenal of yo-yo tricks. Mindy reminded me of that. He had bowling trophies filling our garage. And he knew how to deal cards. This is my favorite one. He could deal cards with his toes. Toes as long as fingers. And I bet none of you know this, maybe not even Karen, but he actually knew how to cook. When I was a little kid and I would spend the night at Oliver House before he met Karen, he had a fridge full of steaks and Perrier. That's it. And every night he would cook me a steak. And of course, he could do a perfect cup of coffee because the coffee maker was always going. Everyone probably remembers him as being a little bit impatient. He would not wait on lines. But even during our worst teenage years, he was so kind, generous, and patient with me and Rachel. No matter what we did, how bad we were, his attitude was, that's it? That's not so bad. Maybe because he knew he had probably done something worse in his life. It was truly incredible. He never got mad at us. And his only wish for us was to be happy. He once told me that he never understood how parents could get angry at their children. He said, what is there ever to be angry about? Why would you ever have a reason to be mad at your own children? He spent much of his life dedicated to helping people. He was the most incredibly generous man, and he gave great advice. I remember when I started a new job years back, and I was a little nervous about my first day. He gave me the best advice. He said, just be yourself. I was like, oh yeah, just be myself. And within 6 months, I had a promotion. And once, when Kurt and I had little kids and we're moving, having a difficult time, sorry, Kurt, about this story. I called and was telling him things were great, and his response was, well, honey, are you having enough sex? You need to get back to basics here. And yeah, that was the, quickest relationship turnaround ever. My husband, Kurt, likes to describe him as the master of hyperbole. The funny things that came out of his mouth, we've been talking about the last few nights. Once we had a big storm and there was trees all over the yard, and he said, it's like Iraq after shock and awe. And then, as he got older, he had to pee every 5 minutes, and he used to say that he was worse than the fountains of Versailles. And then, this is very inappropriate, during a Yom Kippur service, when he was deaf and he said everything really, really loud, the rabbi was praying in her sermon for peace in the Middle East, and he thought he was being quiet, and he turns to me and yells, I just think we should nuke them all. Then his mouth got him in trouble. He made some comment at CVS about taking out an Uzi, and that got him handcuffed and put in jail, which, of course, Karen went to pick him up, and he was laughing hysterically, but Uncle John probably wasn't very happy about that one. Over the course of the last few years, his health declined, but he was still so optimistic. Rabbi mentioned yesterday how his core, he was just a great salesman, and we thought, well, maybe that was it. Maybe he was just telling himself that things were going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. He's going to be out there dancing and having fun. And as he lost his ability to do the things he loved, we just made sure we indulged him in every way we could. His friends came and took him to play cards. We would sneak in corned beef and mallies into his room. And then he would play tricks on the nurses and the aides and laugh with Karen about his ridiculous behavior. Right until last week, whatever small joy he could still have, he just made the most of every moment. And he passed peacefully with a piece of Nicorette gum in his mouth and a room full of women outside. Dad, I love you so much. I miss you terribly, and I am so glad your suffering's over. Thank you.
Boy, I'm so happy hearing Hallie's speech, because when I first was going to give a speech, Scott Davis said to me, "You better not say anything." But I figured, I'm just going to say it. Hello, my name is Sandy Schenker. I've been friends with Floyd for almost 40 years. But let me first say, there was nothing as important to Floyd as his family, Karen, his kids, his grandkids. You guys were his life. But the truth is, I didn't know and experience Floyd that way. I knew Floyd by playing gin with him for 30 years, by running our fantasy football team, and be eating hundreds of lunches with him. We were just very close. Floyd was an amazing friend, and when healthy, would do anything in the world for you. But what was also true, he had no qualms about asking you to do some things that were definitely on the edge. In Floyd's first stint at Manoa Park, Floyd called me one morning and said, "I need something desperately by 12 o'clock. I screamed, "Floyd, I'm not bringing any alcohol or any pills." He responded in that calm voice that only he had, "Listen to me. I need you to go to Corky and Lenny's and get me a lox sandwich with sweet pickles." First, how many people eat sweet pickles? I said, "Floyd, there are signs all over, absolutely no food to be brought in." He said, "I know. That is why I need you to go to Corky's, get me the sandwich, throw the bag away, and go across the street to FedEx and put the lox sandwich in a FedEx bag." What idiot would do it? I did it. Floyd Silver had an incredible sense of humor. We all have friends that can make us laugh, make us smile, but it's rare to have a friend that can make you laugh out loud. Floyd just had that gift. Just a few months ago, after Floyd and Karen sold the house on Jackson, Floyd had Karen come into my furniture store, pick out furniture for their new apartment at the Four Seasons. Karen met with my partner, a lot of people know him, Steve Sloan, another very close friend of Floyd's, and I'm sure he's here today. Excuse me, I'm nervous here. Now, for sure, Karen had some design, decorating ability in her DNA. Unfortunately, Steve does not, and Floyd knew it. So after all the furniture was ordered, and for the record, everything came out fine, Floyd called me. He was at a Hoosier at the time, recovering from pneumonia, and he asked me if all had been delivered. I said, "Not yet, in about a week. What's the rush?" Floyd laughed. "I got Architectural Digest coming to the department to do a 10-page expose, and Steve and Karen are going to be on the cover." I said, "That was just Floyd." A great quality that Floyd had was he never complained. The glass was always half full. He just loved life, and things were always fabulous. How many of us called Floyd the past 6 weeks and hear Floyd never complained and say it was fabulous at Manoa Park Suite? Listen, I live in a nice house in Beechwood. I have a great life. And yet when Floyd would expound how great the food was, how great cocktail hour was, how he could come and go as he pleased, I swear I became jealous. My favorite Life is Fabulous story, as it pertained to Floyd, occurred, I think, almost 3 years ago. He called me at 6:30 at night, and the truth is, Hallie referred to it. And he says, I'm sitting here sipping a delicious cup of coffee, eating a fresh donut, and someone is bringing me in a hot corned beef sandwich. I said, okay, what's the big deal? He says, well, do you know where I'm at? I said, no. He says, I happen to be sitting in a Woodmere jail cell. But then he adds, it's great here. It's fabulous. That's who just Floyd was. I asked Floyd, what could you have done? And only in his manner, he told me he had a very slight issue with CVS. And for those who don't know the story, he was picking up prescriptions, and CVS did mess them up. And instead of asking for the manager, he volunteered to the female clerk that one day someone's going to come in here with an Uzi. And then the events unfolded. But the truth is, that's not the gist of that story. The gist of the story, because Floyd had made other stories and other mistakes like this over the past 30 years, is when Floyd would tell it to you, he would tell it to you and so calmly, so methodically, almost so soothingly, that it always felt like he did nothing wrong. Floyd, we love you. I was so lucky to have you as a friend. Boy, I'm going to miss you. Thank you.
Sandy, you promised 2 minutes. My sympathy, Karen, Hallie, Rachel, Dee Dee, the family. My name is Ken Lurie. Floyd was my closest friend for 37 years. I know there's a lot of people here that know Floyd a lot longer than me. However, I knew Floyd in a different way. Floyd was my sponsor in AA. And I connected with him immediately. I met him, I went through treatment when I was 25 years old, and they told me I was supposed to go to AA, and when I came back from treatment, they told me that I should get a sponsor. By the time I got back to Cleveland, my mother had already found Floyd. He was the only Jewish alcoholic that we knew. And all he wanted to do was talk about himself, and that was the last thing. And so he would tell me these stories about himself, and I would immediately go back to my father, and I thought he was crazy, but we laughed. But he helped me, and he spent time with me, and I struggled, and I didn't really know what to expect, life being sober, and Floyd spent a lot of time with me. He took me to meetings. He told me to call him every day at 9:30. Every day at 9:30 I would call him. And he always knew what to say. And it was hard for me at first, and he helped me. And so I called him one day, 9:30, and I said, boy, I really feel good today, Floyd. And in his own way, he said, don't worry, it won't last. But what some of you might not know is that, like myself, Floyd helped 100 people like me. There was a very serious side to him. He was a standing pillar in the AA community. He had a real following, and when I came into the program, he showed me the way, and we instantly became friends, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. He had the best sense of humor, I don't have to tell anybody, out of anybody I ever met. There isn't one person here, not one person, that he did not make fun of. Not one person. He was self-deprecating, but he did it with love. He had a heart of gold. He did not have a mean bone in his body. Moderation was not Floyd's strong suit. When he drank too much. When he smoked too much. When he did drugs, he did too much. Probably gambled too much. He was by far the best customer that Nicorette ever met. But Floyd, he loved golf. It was, you know the guys, he loved making fun of everybody on the golf course, Leon, Billy, Scott, Shelley. And he was a good putter. You know he was a good putter, but God got back at him because he made fun of all of us, and he got the yips and chipping. He was always afraid to get near the green. He was generous, he was fun-loving, he was a great sport. He wasn't the most serious guy. And patience, like Hallie said, wasn't one of his stronger suits. There was one time he was at Beachmont with, and he was having lunch, and Arnie King came up to him and said, you know, he had bought a watch from Floyd 30 years ago, and he said, you know, I think my watch is a little slow. He says, I'm going to come see you. And Floyd said, well, call me first. I want to make sure I'm not there. He lived in his own world on Chagrin Boulevard, from the store to Beachmont to home. Very rarely did he get outside of that triangle. I always thought it was something. He never went to Walmart. He didn't understand it. He was never in Walmart. He was an unusual guy. But I learned a lot from him. I learned a real lot from him. He taught me how to not take myself so serious. He taught me how to have fun and make fun of myself. Now on Sunday, I went to go see him, and he was very sick, and he was in a lot of pain. And Alan Schwartz was there, and he was in a lot of pain, and he had me put pillows under his legs, and he didn't want to live any longer. He was in so much pain. He says, I can't live like this anymore. I can't, I need, for my brain, I have to stop thinking. But even in his darkest moment, he still had a sense of humor. And he said, Kenny, he said, pass me the Nicorette gum. So I pass him a piece of gum, and I said, you know, Floyd, I said, look at yourself. I said, why don't you just smoke a cigarette already? And he said, well, you know, sometimes I do that. And Alan said to him, well, you know, that might not be very good for you. And Floyd looked over at him. He said, everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. The last 7 years were not the greatest for Floyd between work and his health issues. And it was really tough. And the last couple of months for me, I was mad. I did not want to see him like this. I just didn't want to see. And I know there were a lot of people that felt the same way. And I didn't realize how sick he was. I really didn't realize how sick he was. And I thought about that, and I just have to say, we're all human, and our strengths and weaknesses are what make us human, and Floyd was very human. He really was. But what is his legacy? Look around at all the friends. We all have funny stories about Floyd Silver. He has a lot of friends here today. He helped a lot of people. He worked really a lot of people in AA. And he, like myself, and I'm one of them. But let his efforts to help others be a part of his legacy and a reminder of who Floyd Silver was. I will, like yourselves, I will really, really miss him. He was as fun as they get. He was just the greatest, and I need to find a new sponsor. I loved him.
I often start my eulogy for a person who lived a good, full life with the following sentence. We are gathered in this large and loving assembly to pay tribute and give honor to the life of our loved one. That sentence didn't work for me today, not because it isn't true, it is. This is a large and loving assembly, and Floyd does deserve tribute and honor. But that sentence isn't enough. More essentially true and necessary than tribute and honor for Floyd is celebration. We are gathered in this large and loving assembly to celebrate the joy and the enjoyment of a life really well lived, to celebrate Floyd. Let us celebrate his beginnings with his parents and sister and his lifelong friends, many of whom are here today. For the family, life was centered around the business. He worked alongside Esther and Eddie for a really, really long time. Floyd did it with some grace and a lot of humor, and thrived as he built the store into the institution so many cherished. Floyd was born, I think, with the gift of knowing that life is to be enjoyed. In no particular order, and by no means a complete list, and somewhat redundant, Floyd enjoyed golfing and trips with buddies and having the only wife who didn't complain about them. He loved working the room when he entered a restaurant. He relished not gambling at the track with Daisy and Bella. Floyd greatly looked forward to getting picked up from Honora to go play cards at the club. Were there times in his life it got to be too much? Yes, there were. There were years when simply living over the top would have been a relief. It was too much. But here's where the story gets good. Floyd lived the magic of a life reinvented. When he got sober, his old friends didn't go away. They still loved him, and he them. He added new friends, devoted friends who also insisted on enjoying life. Friends too numerous to name. But in a special thanks to Blaze and Jean, she should rest in peace, who introduced him and Karen, and to Kenny and to Keith, who have always been willing to do yet more. During those early years, life was magic. It had its moments and even weeks that were hard, that were really hard. But the joy of still being alive and still living with joy were indescribable. Coming to understand himself, to regain the promise of his childhood years, and to find God at the center of it all was heaven on earth. The past 7-10 years, give or take, were the hardest. When illness found its way in, he struggled. Floyd struggled with his body. He struggled to regain his sobriety. He struggled with the store. But here's the key. He was still Floyd. He still left the house dressed to impress. He still sought ways to help, to reach out to others. He still sought connection and friends and to bring enjoyment to others. We feel a great sadness. As much as he was a devoted husband to Karen, a loving brother to Dee Dee, an amazing father to Hallie and Richard, and then Kurt and Joe as well, a dear son-in-law to Margie, and the most over-the-top, gobsmacked grandpa to David, Daisy, and Bella. You will miss him especially, and we share some measure of your grief. Our prayer for you is this. Alongside your sadness, woven into its very fabric, we pray you also touch the joy that defined his life. Here's a story from Rabbi Twersky. He often tells the tale that in answer to the throne of what will happen when each of us, in answer to the question, what will happen when each of us reaches the throne of glory? Rabbi Twersky teaches that God will ask us many questions. He will ask, God will ask, did you treat others with kindness and consideration? Did you honor your spouse? Were you generous with all you had? Did you reach out to others less fortunate than you? Floyd will be able to answer yes to those questions. Many of us will, most of us. But here's the hard one, Rabbi Twersky says. He says, God is going to ask, did you enjoy what I've provided for you? Did you live life with happiness and taste of the beauty and the abundance that I made for you? That's the hard one, to really enjoy, to love deeply, to grasp the good and spread it wide. Did you do that? And Floyd will answer with a resounding yes. And the gates will open. In honor and tribute, but mostly in celebration, we pray just this, Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be so. Amen. May Floyd's memory endure among us all as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that with you is the fountain of life, that in your light we shall see light. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. May I ask those of you who are able to please rise. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kiloshim Utohorim Kezohar Harakia, Mazirim et Nishmat HaChaver Shelanu Shehalach LaOlamo, Ba'al HaRachamim Yasirehu B'Seter Kenafav LaOlamim, V'yitzor B'tzorcha Chayim et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach B'Shalom HaMishkavo, V'nomar, Amen. God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto the soul of Floyd Silver, who has departed this world. Source of mercy, bring him into your presence and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. It is written that he has achieved much, who has lived well, laughed often, and loved with a full heart, who has gained the respect of the wise and the trust of the young, who has filled a place, accomplished some task, who has left the world better than he found it, who has appreciated the true and the beautiful, who has looked for the good in others and given of the good he had, whose life was an inspiration, and we pray, as this was Floyd, that his memory be a benediction. For those of you who are able, would you join me, please, in the 23rd Psalm? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Please know that Shiva will be observed today after interment at the cemetery until 9 p.m. at Beachmont, and tomorrow from 2 to 5, and Saturday from 7 to 9 at Margie Zellman's home on Cedar Road. As we close, a thought from Chaim Potok. We live less than the time it takes to blink an eye, if we measure our lives against eternity. So it may be asked, what value is there to a human life? There is so much pain in the world. What does it mean to have to suffer so much if our lives are nothing more than the blink of an eye? I learned a long time ago that the blink of an eye in itself is nothing, but the eye that blinks, that is something. A span of life is nothing, but the person who lives the span is something. A person can fill that tiny span with meaning. Meaning is not automatically given to life. It is hard to fill one's life with meaning. But a life filled with meaning is worthy of rest. Our service will continue at the cemetery.